Hey YouTube, French Fried Taters here, and today I just wanted to make a quick kind of beginner tips video for Path of Exile 2. I know that this game can be really intimidating for a lot of people, especially people that never played Path of Exile 1, so I just kind of put together a big list of tips that I figured might help people out. So let's jump right into it. Starting out with some options, this is something that I learned from Path of Exile 1 that I immediately set, like as soon as I could load into the early access here, is show enemy health bars and show friendly health bars. This makes some of the more chaotic encounters just easier to deal with, especially if you have a bunch of minions and stuff, as you see here that I do. It just kind of makes it easier to tell what's going on. I also like to show my mana and my health numbers. Really this kind of helps as well when you're comparing items. Instead of having to open the details of everything, you can just kind of put something on or off and see if it affects your mana or health or energy shield in the way that you'd like. Another one I figured I would mention, if you ever feel like your items are kind of glitching out or you can't see them, it may be because you accidentally hit the Z key. The Z key will actually toggle on and off the visibility of items, so that is a toggle for it. If you do toggle it off, the key to show items becomes the Alt key. So if you hit Z and it toggles off, you have to hold Alt to see the items. Otherwise, you can just press Z again and all items will automatically show. Moving on to some passive tree and just general build tips. Now I know this passive tree can be daunting, but I've got a few little tips and tricks here that can kind of make it easier to go through and make a build or even theory craft as you go. My very first tip here is an easy one, but it's just the fact that you can simply search the passive tree. You can search for things like elemental damage, fire, basically anything that you can think of, you can type in here and it will show you if it has something corresponding. I do plan on making a separate video that deep dives into how to make your own build, but as far as some very simple tips, my biggest one is that if you're trying to make your own build, try to hyper-focus on one damage type and build everything around that, and look for synergies within the game that help buff that damage type, whether it's lightning, physical, fire, or just any damage type that you come across in the game. Try to hyper focus on that one damage type and try to build a build around it. If you spread yourself too thin in this game or try to spread your damage over multiple types of damage, you're generally going to end up having an issue where your damage kind of falls off towards the end game on one of the damage types, or you can't really catch up because the game does get rather difficult near the end. So your safest bet is to just focus on one type, at least for your first few builds. Another concept that really helped me, and I can't stop thinking about it ever since I heard it. I don't remember where I heard it, but in some kind of showcase before the game was released in early access, somebody was talking about the concept of passive highways in the skill tree. Now what a passive highway is it's one of these long sections that you see just kind of leads to other parts of the skill tree. So say you're a fire damage build and you see a bunch of really good passives for fire damage way far away from where your build starts. You can start pathing towards those early so that when you do finally get there and the game starts ramping up in difficulty, each level you can just spec right into those powerful nodes. Another thing to note here is that all life has been taken out of the tree from Path of Exile 1. There used to be just a bunch of life in the tree, and I think the reason they did this was because basically every build just ended up centering itself around life since it's such a great resource. Now life has been taken out of the tree. The one exception to this rule is that every point of strength that you put on an attribute node will give you, I think it's 5 points of life or something very small like that. The reason I'm bringing this up is because, yes, you want to focus on one type of damage when you're making your build, but the other thing that you want to focus on is choose a defense type that makes sense for your character. Whether it be armor, evasion, energy shield, pick one of those defense types and kind of go hard on those in the tree as well, so that your defenses don't fall off as you are going through the game. Every class when starting out on the tree has two options to start, and it's going to be either an offensive or a defensive node, and that node that is defensive is going to kind of list the obvious defense that is going to be for your class. For your first build or so, I recommend just picking that and sticking with it. Another thing worth mentioning is that some classes are kind of hybrid and they start with like an armor and evasion on the tree. And I did want to mention that there will be armors that drop that give both armor and evasion, or energy shield and evasion, or whatever. So you are good to just hyper focus on two if it is kind of a hybrid class to start. My last point for planning builds, and it kind of segues into my next section here, is if you are brand new, one of the easiest things you can do instead of trying to plan out your whole build is just follow a build guide. A build guide is just going to be a guide that is made for you that you can follow every step along the way, so you don't have to go and try to make those decisions yourself and likely fail for your first time, get frustrated, and not continue playing. Now, in contrast to this, if you are a veteran and you kind of got stuck in a loop of following build guides in the past for Path of Exile 1, I actually recommend trying the adverse and not following a build guide. I myself have been not following build guides with Path of Exile 2 for my first time ever, and I will say that it's actually like really rewarding and feels awesome to be able to make builds on my own. And even though they might not be the most blasty, crazy map clearing builds, I've just been having so much fun doing it myself. So I kind of recommend trying that out for a few characters at least if you are a veteran. As far as planning your build out and looking up build guides, there's one resource that's very good for that, and it is Maxroll. I've actually put a link in the description and also linked some of their better tools, but they do have a passive tree planner that is very easy to use and very easy to search. When you search something, it kind of highlights it in this like really bright green. It just makes it easier to go along. You can also save your actual steps as you make a build. So as you see here, I can select a few nodes and then I can go back and forth with these arrow keys here so that I can kind of plan out my build before I even try it. And then as I go along, I can, as I gain levels and passives, I can just kind of hit these arrows and follow my own custom guide as I go. If making your own build isn't your speed, there are huge content creators that are basically working for Maxroll, making their own massive build guides, and there's a search function here that you can use. So really just a great resource. I also wanted to mention that they do have some other general guides. One really good one is this kind of quest reward guide. Just shows you all of the quest rewards as you go throughout the game. Really useful resource. Another extremely useful, if not necessary, resource is the Path of Exile official trade tool. I want to preface this by saying make sure you are going to the Path of Exile 2 trade tool and not the Path of Exile 1 trade tool. The easiest way to do this is just make sure that you're actually going to the Path of Exile 2 website and then clicking trade. There is a Path of Exile 1 website basically, as you see here, and they also have a trade button. So just make sure you don't waste a bunch of time searching for items in the wrong game. Now, I will be making a more in-depth guide on trading, but once you do find the proper trade website, just know that you can use your item category here to search. You have level requirements, and you can add stat filters down here. Makes it very easy to search for exactly what you need. So do mess around with this, and it's worth noting that Chaos Orbs are no longer the kind of standard currency like they were in Path of Exile 1. It's going to basically be Exalted Orbs now, because the drop rate is a lot higher on Exalted Orbs. So just know that like basically what used to be one Chaos is now one Exalt. Speaking of items, I do have some beginner tips for items. Items can be daunting in this game, and a lot of them do drop, and it's kind of hard to tell what to pick up and what not to, so I'm going to go through a few of the basics here. This kind of goes hand in hand with what I was saying earlier when building out your build. It should be kind of obvious at least what kind of items that you should be picking up, because they'll have kind of a base defense that they use. So say you picked evasion earlier, you're going to be mainly looking at items that you pick up that already have that base evasion defense type, because it'll just kind of fit into your build, obviously. Now, some of the less obvious things that you want to focus on is, I would say that the most important stats on an item, period, unless you're talking about the weapon, which is obviously damage, is going to be life and resistances almost always. So if you find any item in the game that has 2 big resistances rolls on them, that is a great item to pick up, and you should consider wearing it or at least keeping it for later on when you do need those resistances. 3 resistances is preferred. They're going to be very rare, and those are going to be valuable items. So even if it's not something that exactly fits your build, do keep those items with 3 resistances on them and put them up to trade because they will sell. In addition to life rolls and resistance rolls, boots, you're going to want to look for movement speed buffs, as movement has been slowed down a lot in this game, so it's even more valuable than it was before. And boots are the only item type that can buff your movement speed, so do look for those rolls on boots. For gloves, in addition to your life and resistance rolls, you are going to be looking for things like attack speed, cast speed. Those are all going to be mods on your gloves, so look out for those. I did want to mention that spirit can be found on 3 types of items in the game, and that is amulets, scepters, and body armor. So if you are a class that uses spirit, just know that you can find it on those 3 item types. The last thing I did want to touch on items here is damage. This kind of ties into what I was saying before when you're kind of theory crafting your build. Make sure you focus on your 1 damage type. Don't get distracted by the word damage. Like a plus 12 to 18 fire damage is not going to help you with your lightning build. So even if it sounds nice or makes the weapon look like it does more damage, it doesn't really if you are hyper focusing on 1 damage type. So do keep that in mind. Don't get distracted by the sparkly damage numbers and make sure that you are focusing on your 1 damage type. I promise you this will help you make a decision in the long run. And that brings us to the end of the list. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you got some value from this. If you can think of any other tips that I left out or anything like that, go ahead and comment below so that people can pick them up as they go, as this game is a learning experience that basically never stops. This game is very complex and unforgiving, so any help that I can give the community, I'm going to do my best and do so. A lot of these topics, like maybe making a build, items, I did want to make another sort of deeper dive into the PoE Trade website, so I will be making more videos on these topics as I go along. Other than that, thanks for watching. Give me a subscribe and a like if you liked it. I am a very small channel and it helps me out a lot. Leave a comment down below if you have anything else to add, and I will see you on the next video.